Oh, they're on. Okay, I would like to call to order the Monday, November 18th meeting of the City of Monona Finance and Personnel Committee. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Alder Kitzler?
Here.
Mayor O'Connor?
Here.
Alder Wood, we assume, is on his way.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the November 4th meeting?
Move to approve?
I'll second. Any corrections or additions?
Nope.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Minutes are approved. There are no appearances. There is no unfinished business. We have a few items under new business. Item A, consideration of Resolution 19-11-2383, approval of participation in a Wisconsin Bureau of Transportation Safety Grant titled 2020 Capital Area OWI Task Force. Kurt is going to
Do we have a
tell us
motion?
about this.
Move
Is
to-
there a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
I'll second. Okay.
For your consideration this evening is our participation in the 2020 Capital Area OWI Task Force. This traffic grant is $10,000, would begin November 20th and run through September 30th of 2020. The standard grant cost sharing of 25% is along with this grant, and that is made up by fringe benefits and on-duty straight-time traffic activity.
Is this the standard grant? that
Same
we
kind of grant
usually-
we've been doing the last couple of years.
usually get?
Keep it going.
And just so you know, we budget for this in 2020, so there's no budget amendment needed.
Okay. Any questions? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I'll say aye also. Motion passes. Next item, 6B, consideration of Resolution 19-11-2384, approval of participation in the Wisconsin Bureau of Transportation Safety Grant titled 2020 Dane Suburban Seatbelt Task Force. Is there a motion to approve this?
Move to approve?
I will second. Go ahead.
All right, this is for a $16,000 traffic grant with a focus on safety belt use and speeding, and OWI as well. Standard match of 25% is $4,000, and this grant will also run November 20th through September of 2020.
And we've had this
Yep, same grant.
before as well, right? Andrew, any questions?
No, I'm trying to think of some, but
And Mark, is this something that we also budgeted for?
We do, yeah.
If there aren't any other questions, then all in favor say aye.
aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank
Thank
you. Next, item C, review and discussion of draft City of Monona tree donation policy. Do we want a motion to approve this, or is just
No,
for
it's
review?
just
This?
It can be,
Discussion.
just discussion.
Okay.
This item was put together because we'd been getting some requests from citizens who wanted the opportunity or the option to provide a donation to the city in memory of somebody to plant a tree. So I looked at a number of different policies from communities across the country, put together this one-page draft of a policy, tried to keep things short and to the point. Again, it allows somebody to make a tax-deductible donation to the city. It would go in a separate sinking fund where that money would sit. We would buy trees and plant them kind of seasonally, depending on weather, at the most appropriate times. And in donating money to this account, the donator would not get the ability to place a plaque nor dictate the location of the tree. That would be something that's left up to staff to decide where's the best possible location for those trees. But we have talked about, if they're donating it, for example, for a family member, we're more than happy to do some sort of presentation at the site once the tree has been planted or anything like that.
And we're going to do some kind of a certificate too, aren't we?
Certificate, yep.
And when you say they're not able to designate a location, are they able to designate a park, but not a location within that park? Are they able to?
The way it's written presently, no. We could talk about that. The challenge is, if they pick a park that they like to put a tree in and that park just for whatever reason doesn't work to add more trees, then it gets a little bit more tricky, but that's definitely something we can talk about.
Could we maybe say a park or a right-of-way tree, and they wouldn't designate the park?
They could pick one or the other, yeah, that's fine.
And maybe if they had a preference for a park, we could see if that park needed one, but otherwise, I don't know, I don't want to make it too cumbersome for
yeah.
staff either, but
Something the idea of like, you could state a preference for,
Sure.
but not guaranteed.
Sure.
And then these are, in addition, they're above and beyond the trees that we already have budgeted.
Yep.
to repurchase.
This is,
Okay.
separate. This is like a community donation fund for tree installation. Yep.
yeah, because I don't think we probably have anywhere near budgeted what we really could use anyway, so this will be a good. I know of somebody who would like to give it to a family member for Christmas present this year, for instance, and, so yeah, we might as well put it out there if people are interested.
And I think it says they can't stipulate the kind, right? Okay.
Just because, you know, again, we don't want them selecting some tree that's not going to be viable.
Oh.
And if we have a need for a certain type of tree, we'd like the option to be able to buy that with those funds.
Okay.
And again, this is the policy, so we can revise it as needed in the future if it's not working the way we want it to.
Although, what do we mean by saying through communication between city staff and the donator, an approved species will be chosen? That kind of sounds like they'll have some input.
Yeah, I mean, we you know, if there's a type of tree that they'd like, we'll definitely take that under consideration.
If it's one that we have,
Yeah.
like maybe we could show them the kind that we, because we have a whole list of them, I know.
Mhm.
Teresa will plant.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you write this on paper and it comes off seeming a little cold. But no, I mean, obviously, we'd consider this to be a conversation and dialogue with the donator and try to meet their needs as best as possible, with the understanding that there are some limitations to what we can and can't do.
Okay. So anything else?
Mm.
Well, I'm not sure where Doug is, although sometimes he just comes in right at the end. So maybe what we should do is move ahead to the monthly financial report for now, and because we primarily like to have this discussion about the family leave policy with him here, so.
Mhm.
Sure.
Okay, so Mark,
So I'm going to, it's just labeled. Okay, I'll use this. Just start with page 10, just kind of went in a couple things here. Public accommodation tax, currently this is going to be moved at the end of the year when we do the audit, but this is the hotel tax. We're at 69%. The goal is to be at 83%, but we're missing one of the hotels, and that just recently came in. With that, it's just coming in, we're basically at 40,000 left to go. So we'll be well over the budget number. We'll probably come in at 260 or so, or 275 once we get the fourth quarter in.
and that's without Avid.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Let's see. Oh, yeah, 199. Page 11, court penalties and fines. This one right here, we're probably going to project it just with the current trends. We'll probably be about $10,000 short in that account with that. Boat launch and boat fees and collections. This year, in the future years, it's always been, we always budget 21,000. It's one of those things that's each year with now that we don't have Ace Hardware anymore. We're going to be close to getting our budgeted amounts here every year from here on out. It's going to be give or take, I think, every year until we find somebody to work with like we did Ace. So this money is collected in another fund. It's in its own separate trust fund, 80, because that's the way the.
Oh, so it's not really as bad as it looks.
Yeah, so basically, it's collected in Fund 800, and then it gets transferred over at the end of the year to get to what the budget amount is.
So how much is it under budget, do we know?
So right now we collected, it's actually included all the trust funds. They're kind of confusing to follow, but on page 51, or 50, page 50, so far in the trust account, we collected 21,398.
Oh, okay. So we're over.
Yeah, there's some expenses that come out of it, but it'll
Oh,
be,
okay.
that are in page 8, that fund too. With that. Just page 13, I know we've been hitting on this, it was Jim, legal retainer. We're at 57%, we'll probably save a good, 20,000 there.
I've got a question about legislative salaries.
Yeah,
Why are those more than we've got budgeted?
I will be doing a budget amendment a year that's, your salary, for right now I have coded into that account, which actually should be in the executive salary, so I
Oh,
will
okay.
correct that. I'm waiting to correct that at year end because it's just an easier starting point.
Okay.
Otherwise, it gets kind of sloppy if I do it every month.
Well, there he is.
Yeah, 6:15, right?
6. I'm so glad someone else did
Yeah,
this.
you guys are trading
We
roles.
changed it to 6 when we added the family leave thing.
What did that change to 6:15?
I thought he was in Denver.
From 6.
No, the opposite. That's okay. We're going through the monthly financial report right now.
Okay, so we're done.
Well, we haven't done the family care policy. We're waiting for you.
Okay.
And if you want to have any questions about the tree donate, or about any of it, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay, Mark, you want to continue?
Yeah, I just couple things. Page 15, data processing. So far, we're on budget that year, but with their outside service. Right above the elections, we'll have a savings this year that's done for the year. As you know, in the budget, it rotates every year. Some years are over, some years are under, based on number of elections. One area, page 20, streets and highway, street maintenance accounts. This has been probably an abnormal year for,
Could we jump back to 16?
Yep.
I'm sorry. This tax write-off,
Yep, I just actually received a letter from the state, so I'll be making an adjustment, how much we charge all the different districts. So I record it here, then it gets reimbursed through here, so.
so that's not anything to be concerned about?
No,
Okay.
I'll have the next meeting, the number will be totally different. It'll be
Okay.
close to the 70,000.
So I'm sorry, you're on page 20?
20, yep. It has been an abnormal year for the street maintenance accounts. It just seems everything just, snow, as you see already, we're going to be hit. That's a number. Snow and ice salaries are okay. It's going to be over budget, but it's one of those things, there's other items, because it's the public works, so we'll be down. Streets, the overtime for snow is one number to be concerned about. We're already right now $283 over our budget, overtime budget. If it keeps on going where we're at, that number will be increasing. The snow and ice supplies, just because, the winter already starting last year's, we're well over that. So, and just the snow and equipment maintenance repair. So it's just been a abnormal year. Usually we're not over like this, but it's just one of those years. So hopefully next year will be a little bit better. And then this kind of one hit on community rec funds. Page 29. One area I'm a little concerned about are special revenues and revenue funds. Basically, budget of revenues is the same as the expense, so it should equal out. So this year, special events revenues received so far 33,000, almost 34,000. On the very next page, the revenues, the expenses is 34,000, and I was just looking at what we're getting so far for November. We're starting to have, we'll probably have like a $6,000 to $7,000 gap in between there by end of the year. So something I'll probably, I told Jake I need to sit down and meet with them and see if there's something that being coded in there or something we need to improve on, but for the future. But there probably will be a little bit of a gap between the two at year end.
Do we know what did we budget for that for next year?
I don't know the exact amount. I can look it up. We get later. And I did include a little bit of analysis here on page 52.
Could we go back to page 31?
Sure.
Is that right? I'm just curious, under senior services, why maybe this isn't coded right, why the salary line is so out of whack.
Yeah, that's my fault. We fixed it for the 2020 budget. We have a full-time person, which would go into the administration salary, which it currently is, which it currently is being coded there.
Oh, so that's why the
Yeah, but the part-time went from full-time.
part-time is
Yeah,
off
so I haven't,
also, okay.
I have to,
I didn't notice that.
so I did fix that for the 2020 budget, is
Okay.
fixed. Page 52, I mean, as far as the concerns, everything seems like it'll be okay. Most counties, just want to hit on 52, kind of, we talked about this last time. The rec funds and the senior center, it's hard to figure out what's really going on because there's like 4 different funds inside that one, no, 4 different departments inside that one fund. So it's kind of hard to track what's really going on, so I kind of break it out. So on page 52 shows the community center I just did last month, so it's period from September to October. We don't get a lot of revenue in right now, so a lot of it does go down. So like the community center started at 49, and then October at 38,000 is the revenue or net income so far. We should be at the end of the year. We should be in the positive. The rec center, the rec departments, 54 went down to 38. It's one of those. Kind of looking at the trend right now. I think it's going to be close. I think we actually might be a little on the negative side with that. Senior center will break even. That's right on target on both the revenues and expenses. We're actually up a little bit on the revenue side with that. Outdoor pool, we will have a little bit of a loss there, probably about $5,000 to $10,000 at the very end.
Even with the summer being as busy as it was?
Yep, even with that, a lot of it ends up being this year was worse than some of the other years because even though we have a good summer, we didn't have the days off. Like a lot of times we have a lot of rain days where they don't work as much, so it kind of saves on the salaries and stuff. So this year, we didn't have that. Pool's expenses all just a little bit more than usual. So that's which is good because I think it's probably only going to be about a $5,000 loss in the very end, but it will be a little bit of a negative. I don't know if you had all 4 together with the community center being positive and senior center positive in whole, it should be pretty close to breaking even. It's going to be up or down just a little bit one way or the other. So that's kind of really what I wanted to hit on. I don't know if you have any questions or concerns.
Does anyone have any questions? Andrew?
So I know, so on the summary sheet, I mean, is this something that you said you're going to sit down with Jake? I mean, is this something to sit down with him and say, how do we make sure that this doesn't happen next year? Or,
Yeah,
I mean, I know the pool's a little bit more.
The pool is
fluid,
harder
but-
yeah, it's more, I think, like some of those rec programs, especially like the special events, are we budgeting correctly, or is it really, revenues are not going to be covering the expenses? It's just something we need to look at as far as how we operate those.
And next year we'll probably have more special events with Grand Crossing open, right?
Right. But a lot of those, I think he has budgeted as part of his riverfront revenue. This would be like, the beer gardens, the Holiday Festival, or the Harvest Festival, things like that, those type of things. Spectacular and things like that was more or less the holiday thing. So,
Well, it seems like we need to take a closer look at those and the rec programs and see just where.
yeah, so I want to see where all the revenues kind of hit in this
Yeah.
year. So
So is that something we probably need to wait till like the end of the year to do, or?
yeah, obviously, I already told Jake I wanted to meet with him to kind of go
Okay.
over it, but he's been so busy right now with all this other stuff he's been doing, so we'll meet and go over
Okay,
that stuff.
yeah, I'd like to hear what the results of that are too.
I mean, that's all I have.
Okay. Given that, then why don't we go back to, well, Doug, first of all, is there anything in the first 3?
No.
So why don't we go to the review and discussion of draft paid family care policy, that's item 6D.
Want to do a motion on that? Check?
Sipping,
But
oh,
we haven't done the checks yet.
No, I mean the first time, yeah. You don't need it. Never mind.
That's okay.
Let's see.
So in terms of the, the family care policy, we're just bringing it in for discussion tonight. We're not talking about moving it on to the council or anything. But basically, I think you both got the email I sent last week. I realized after I hadn't seen the current version of this in a while. And I had some concerns, but specifically, the fact that the policy is drafted includes giving employees time off for dealing with their own personal sick problem, or health problems, which I think they should be using their sick leave for. So what we did was I asked Leah to draft, to include the final draft that said this would cover them, and then include a different draft, a red line written so that they would not be covered, so that for both of you to see. And I guess Leah's here to answer any questions. I think Brian has some things to add. One thing that is, and I did some searching on this too last week, and Leah's been telling me all along that it's been extremely difficult to find any existing policies to even base this on. When we got into this, we thought there were at least some communities that had a policy for family care. There are for parental care, like such as what we passed earlier, but we really haven't been able to find any who do a family care policy. And so it's kind of like, how big of a risk are we taking not knowing what kind of problems we might run into? There's a couple of states, and the two of you can chime in on this too, that they have statewide policies. There's 4 of them. There's another 2 that are going to come online. I'm not sure, and maybe Leah knows this, if they're geared towards like any employer in the state of more than a certain number of workers, or if it's just for governmental employees. They include coverage for employees' own health concerns, but that may be because they don't provide sick leave for them. I don't know. They're also, all of these are handled like disability insurance, where the employees pay into a disability insurance fund that then pays for the coverage. It isn't the city just paying for it as we're proposing to do. So, I know, Brian, did you want to?
The only other thing to add, and this, we classified this as maybe a third option to consider as well. So we've been talking about this at the staff department head level, and some of the thoughts and concerns were brought up this morning at staff meeting. Maybe instead of doing a separate policy that basically puts this time on top of the existing leave structure, another way to achieve the same goal might be to increase the cap on the accumulated sick leave that we're allowed to bank. So right now, under the personnel handbook, an employee that's hired after 2005 is allowed to bank up to, I think it's 85 hours of sick leave, and then anything that's...
Is it 85 hours or days?
Days, sorry. 85 days of sick leave, and anything after that is kind of forfeited by the employee. The suggestion from the department heads is maybe increasing that amount of cappage, because then employees that don't have any of these sort of medical issues and are working for the city long-term are able to bank more hours and then use those hours in days in the event that they have some sort of medical situation. So just another option to throw out there, kind of some staff thought on that.
And we pay out those banked hours if they retire?
No, so we still have a cap in the personal handbook today that caps the amount that we pay out at retirement, so we'd likely leave that cap, and I forget what the day amount is at retirement that we pay out.
85, or some employees are grandfathered at 105.
Right. So you'd write the policy such that you would allow them to bank more during their employment to use, for given medical situations, but at the date of their termination or their retirement, we would only pay out 85. So we wouldn't create an ongoing liability to pay that additional, 100 or whatever days that are banked. But
Right now, we have a situation, we know, where some employees have reached their 85 days, and they don't get to, they can't carry them over. So some people, I think, just take them as days, because otherwise they're losing, which, I mean, I can understand that. So that might help alleviate some of that situation as well.
I think, though, I mean, I understand, employees feeling like, well, they're gonna just lose a benefit if they don't end up using it improperly to take a day off when they're not really sick. But I think a better incentive would be to increase the amount they can cash in at retirement back to, I think, what it was, 10 years or so ago.
Was that when it was 105?
I don't remember what it was.
Was that when it was 105?
It still is 105 for our public safety employees, because that's in their labor contracts, and then it's 105 for anyone who was hired before March something 2005.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's 85.
Okay. But I guess just in terms of, I'm more concerned with people trying to achieve what we're aiming for here, which is people having time available to take to help a family member. Or, you know, I know you suggested some other people with a serious illness or a parent in a nursing home or whatever.
So it's just a point of data. So from the stats that Leah gave me a couple years ago, from 2017 to 2008, there was 28 instances where somebody took paid or FMLA for either themselves or family members. Of those 28, 5 people took them for family members. The rest were all for themselves. So that's just one thing. And then 2, I think one of the other reasons why we were looking at this policy, in addition to the paid family leave, was there was discussion, and I know Alder Moore mentioned this during her comments when we passed it in the budget a couple years ago, was equity. So we're passing this for, we'll just quote unquote say the younger employees, but what are we doing for all the other employees? So that was one reason why we were looking at this other policy.
You mean
too.
you mean the parental leave as opposed
Yeah,
to the?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so I know her argument was, well, she's only supportive of the family leave if we do the family care plan as well.
Mhm.
But I mean,
Well, again, it's all different ways of getting at
Oh,
the
yeah,
same
yeah.
goal.
Right.
and I haven't thought about adding the hours. My comment, at least to your original thought or proposal, just to make it not for themselves is fine. And if a council in the future wants to add it, that would be great. I think hopefully it'll be in federal law by then, but I'm not going to hold my breath. But I mean, so anyways, the edit is worth a discussion, and I'm open to it if hearing more thoughts and different
Okay.
things like that. I haven't thought about the adding hours thing.
So I guess there's a couple of things we're talking about. Should we include employees or not? And then also, however which way that goes, how we
Yeah.
handle the,
I guess the other point of information I'll say is,
providing the actual coverage.
we always knew this family care side would be the more expensive part of it.
Exactly.
I mean, so that's why we budgeted, I forget what it was, maybe 25,000 or 22,000 per year to go into the fund, was
Mhm.
we knew this side would be more expensive. But those estimates did include for themselves. So,
Well, and I think it's, 2 people might be more inclined to take it if they have it,
yeah,
you know, than, so based on what they've already done, it's kind of hard to say.
Yep.
So.
Yeah.
So, thoughts? Doug, did you have any thoughts?
Yeah, well, I agree, I guess, with your idea that not include things for the employees themselves, because they already have the ability to cover those days out of their own sick leave account. The only other so that I had mentioned in my email, one was just a definitional thing about family members and close family members. The other thing was to add, was it for domestic partners, we didn't list the, let's see, where is it now? For, so for domestic partners, it would only be parent, grandparent, or sibling. And my suggestion was that it also include, as it does for the others, this child, stepchild, well, for sure, child and stepchild, just because they're, you know, if they're living in your home, that it creates just as much of a need to have that ability to take the time off as whether the adults are married or not, so.
Do we run into any issues with this the state law that, because right now domestic partners cannot be covered by health insurance, is that right? Or am I wrong? Since this is, I guess this isn't health insurance, this is sick leave, so that doesn't,
Right.
I'm just raising the question. Do you want this, well, I guess it has all these, it says, it just doesn't say, I guess what were the other names you wanted to add? Do you have domestic partner's child?
I had,
You have their parent.
I had said, child, stepchild, foster child, grandchild, or step-grandchild, so it would be the same. Basically, they would have the same ability to.
Meaning the domestic partner's child,
Right.
stepchild. Oh,
Yeah.
okay, I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Alderwood, do they need to live in the same house with the employee or not?
I mean, it would have a bigger impact if your domestic partner's child was living there, either full-time or part-time. But I guess for one thing, rather than get into those kind of details and have to try to police that and figure out, who, if the child's living there and so forth, just avoid that altogether. Yeah, so no.
I guess if we aren't requiring that of someone's parent, say,
Right.
then it seems like we shouldn't have grandchild or whatever, Leah.
I just want to make a point of clarification. Alderwood, you said that you didn't believe we need to include the employee in the policy because their sick leave would cover this. But I just want to make the point of clarification that our sick leave policy does allow our employees to use their sick leave to care for sick family members. So it actually allows them to do both.
So increasing the number of hours available,
Right.
they'd still
There's
be,
another way to-
Right.
yeah.
So it's an acceptable use of sick leave to use
Mhm.
your own sick leave to care for not your own sickness, but someone in your family.
And how many additional hours is the 2 weeks again? Is that 30,
80 hours. or
38 a
something.
week, or?
Or is it 40 a week or 80?
How many additional hours would that be for 2 weeks? Is it 38 hours a week or 37 hours a week?
For what?
For if we added hours, so if we just took this policy and added it to sick leave, for example, I'm not.
Oh, okay. So 40, so it'd be 80 hours?
Oh, it's 40,
Yeah.
okay.
Which would be 10 days, right?
Right.
So bring it up to 95 days.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Of total accumulation.
Yeah, I was thinking yeah, never mind. Okay.
How would that impact public safety? That's something that would have to be, because their contract already says 105, right?
Yes, we would have to amend their contract if we wanted to change that.
But if we just added to 95, they wouldn't want to amend it down, right? They would stick at the 105.
Yeah.
So-
I wouldn't expect they would,
Yeah.
no.
And what about, I guess the same question is employees who are at the 105 that aren't, do we have any employees who aren't public safety who have that 105 limit?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I guess my 2 cents on the hourly, adding hours is, not hourly, adding hours. I wouldn't necessarily, at least at this time in my thinking, wouldn't want to add it to their payout. Because my goal with this is for them
Right.
to use it. It's not something, like, this policy isn't something they get paid for if they don't use it every year.
Correct.
So that's just
And
my
I think
thoughts
that's
at
what
this-
we're
at this
thinking
point,
too,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, because we don't want to make this any more, put something on future councils. It could get to be pretty expensive
Yeah.
over time.
And right now, they accrue sick leave per paycheck.
Yes, so, yes.
is this something, and just throwing out an idea, because this one, you know, the employees are eligible at a certain time and they get their 2 weeks. Is this something that we could implement where we add these hours right away? So they have their 2 weeks of sick time, but it's not paid if they were to retire. Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So that benefit would be kind of new in there when they're eligible, as if they were eligible for this plan, but it would just be in kind of a different format. That might be a little easier.
Mhm.
So you're saying someone would say only had 5 days accumulated?
Yeah, normally you'd,
Yeah.
yeah. So normally you'd have to wait until you accrue a certain amount.
Right.
And say you got sick a little bit before that, but you didn't, you know, whatever. I don't know, just,
So what is the minimum amount that an employee starts with sick leave?
Employees get a day of sick leave a month, starting at hire. So by the end of their first year of employment, they'll have earned 12 days of sick leave.
yeah. So this, I mean, so the policy, you'd have to wait after, so what would that be? That would only be 12 days, so that'd be 2 weeks already if they were there for, but if they got sick, then they wouldn't have the 12 days.
Correct.
So I mean, I could see that if we work that in, where after their 12 consecutive months, they get that bank of sick time.
Like an additional 10
Yeah.
days, you say?
Yeah, but it, yeah, and I don't know how you do it on the back end, but it wouldn't count as a payout if they were to leave. And it also wouldn't accrue, so you don't get 10 days, you know, in year one, another 10 days in year two.
Okay,
It's
so it'd just be a one-time 10-day.
well, one time, and then if they use it, well, so how this policy is, if they use it in a calendar year, then they could get another.
Right.
So I guess that's a whole other discussion, is
Mhm.
how does that work? But,
But I guess we see this, how I understand what you're saying is to give them sort of a boost on a start of accumulating
mhm,
additional hours over 85 days, which obviously if you're just starting, it's gonna take
yeah,
a long time to do that.
yeah,
But,
so that if their family is sick or whatever, they can,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, that they've got a little bit extra. And obviously, if it's a parental leave situation, they already have coverage for that. So, I mean,
Yeah,
younger
yeah.
people would probably more often than not, taking more for maternity leave than big chunks of time like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand there's some people who have different surgeries or whatever. And we'd still be leaving it at, they only get, when they leave, get paid out for 85 hours worth of
Mhm.
the health insurance.
Days.
85 days.
Or 85 days, sorry, yeah.
Yeah,
That's a lot more when you think about it that way.
yeah.
And do we still want to restrict them being able to use that extra time for just family members then?
Right, that's kind of what I was just thinking, is that you'd be in an odd situation where you'd have more sick time available to take
For family.
for a family member's illness than your own.
Except we do allow people just to take their regular sick time for a family member's
True.
illness, so. How
In
do
a
we
way, this would
distinguish
give
that?
them more flexibility, wouldn't it? Because it doesn't have that 3-day.
Mhm.
Well, but before they've accrued as much sick leave as this policy would provide, they wouldn't have enough accumulated sick leave hours for their own illness that they'd be able to use this policy for family members.
Well, I guess that's,
Right.
well, depending on the person, I guess, the employee, I guess. Because they'll have 12 days in the first year, so I guess it depends on how much of their regular sick leave they'd be using during the year, during that first year. Does that make sense?
Right, but do they have to be, I'm sorry, maybe I missed that detail, so they have to be?
This additional hours thing is not included in here.
Right, but do they have to be eligible for this policy? Do they have to have been, they must have been employed at least 12 months?
12,
Yes.
So,
Yeah,
all right.
yeah, so that would be kind of the
Well,
same.
I mean, it does seem like from an administrative standpoint, it would certainly be easier, simpler to just increase the available hours.
Mhm.
Um, Although, since we were talking about domestic partners, I guess right now can a domestic partner, are they able to take FMLA time for their domestic partner's illness or any?
Employees are able to take sick time for their domestic partner's illness. FMLA really does no longer covers domestic partners. The federal policy never covered domestic partners. The state policy did until it was amended in 2018. So now, in order for a domestic partner to be covered under Wisconsin FMLA, they have to have been on the state's domestic partner registry prior to 2018. So for all intents and purposes, they're not really covered.
Right.
Could we allow that in our own, in this?
We can, as long as we're not making this policy, which we currently aren't, as long as we're not requiring that employees be eligible for family medical leave in order to access this
Okay.
policy. And we currently aren't.
So we could make some changes in the way our current policy, in terms of who it covers,
Yes,
to
Right.
reflect some of
Yeah.
the changes that you're
Right.
talking about.
yes. But that very fact that we're not making this policy completely consistent with the family medical leave policy is also the thing that worries me the most about this policy because, we're defining in this policy that an employee or their family member must have a serious medical condition. And what constitutes a serious medical condition is very much, I think, open for interpretation. And so if we're not looking to the family medical leave policies to very specifically define that for us, I think we're gonna be making a lot of decisions on the fly about whether conditions are qualifying or not for this policy. That's the thing that worries me the most about it.
Which is a concern because then, how much discretion does each individual administrator
Absolutely,
have is the problem, I think,
absolutely.
without guidance.
Mhm.
Whereas if we went with the additional hours and kept things the way they are now, that would not be, are we saying, as big an issue?
Right, I mean, if we're just giving employees extra hours and telling them, these are yours to use for your own sickness or for a family member's illness, and not requiring them to apply or to,
Mhm.
justify or verify the sickness or illness, then yeah, it's not gonna be an issue.
And then we could still amend our policy to allow for the domestic partner
Absolutely.
coverage within that.
Mhm.
So do you think we should come up with I don't know if we need to come up with a third policy or an amended policy to our current policy so we can see how that wording looks and bring it back here to talk about? And we'll
Yeah.
still have these two, but we'll also have that, and
Mhm.
if you two think of anything else in the meantime,
Yeah,
possibly include or at least to bring up at that time?
yeah, no, I think, because I think we're all understanding the same thing, but until we see it on paper, maybe we're not, so, yeah.
Okay, so just for clarity's sake, can one of the three of you just articulate what you think that third policy would cover, just so it helps Lee and I?
I think it-
Well, we're-
Well, what I'm thinking is, would it be an expansion of our current policy to add
Adding
the hours, or do we need another policy?
I think it would be easier to amend our current personnel
Okay,
policy.
yeah.
So to increase the number of
Bankable
Hours.
hours. Mhm.
available, and also to add the domestic partner coverage.
Mhm.
And when they would get those bankable hours, we want to add that.
And are we saying the bankable hours that they get are the 10 days? Or are we just saying up to 105 days of sick leave? Where are we?
And does it, so the current policy, it would renew every year, so are we saying it renews? So like if they use it, then it goes back up to 10 days? That's a question, right?
Well, the 10 days is really to add to the total, because that would be the same as this, if they got an additional 10 days every year.
Not an additional, it would just always be at 10 days. So if you didn't use it a year, it wouldn't go to 20, it would still be at 10.
It would keep you at a minimum
Yeah.
of 10?
Yeah.
I know, I have to think about that.
So you're saying that an employee's sick leave balance could be 10 days over what their current cap is. So if their current cap is 85 days, it'd be 95 days, but they'll only get paid out for 85 days.
Correct.
Okay.
And I'm saying too, that, at least how I'm thinking about this, that, so if I am an employee, say I'm older and I start working for the city, and then I work here 12 consecutive months, I get those 10 days allotments, and then say a year into, or 8 months into it, I retire, I don't get paid out those 10 days.
Okay.
So you might just have 15 days, of which 10 are the special stuff. I don't know what we'll term it.
And so if you have to use the special 10 days, then do you get to reset those 10 days?
Calendar,
Okay.
or I think we have it every calendar year, or.
So there
every
could be
12
some
months.
employees that use those 10 days every year and they just keep getting them renewed,
Yeah.
right?
Well, yeah, so that's the
That's.
thing I was bringing up is, do we want that or do we not? I mean, because again, this policy is, it would renew. Right?
Yeah,
What
and
we're-
I don't,
Yes.
what we've been talking about, I don't think it would renew if we give them the additional hours under the cap, would it?
No, if you just raise the cap, it would just be whatever the employee additional that they banked in any given year on a rolling basis.
Because I think we have to assume the employees have some incentive to save, to not use their sick leave. I mean, this just gives them a little boost to get started, but I don't see it as necessarily we're giving them that in addition to the 12 days they get every year.
And we're not considering just allowing employees to bank an unlimited amount of sick leave, but just only get paid out for what their cap is set at?
You mean like they can bank 158 days or something, or,
Mhm.
yeah, I don't.
How does that deal with a representative then? You'd have to negotiate that, or would that be something that we'd have to figure out our strategy?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we just need to think about this and come back
Yeah.
with some additional questions. Why don't you come up with a draft and let us think about it, and I think we're gonna be back and forth on this a few
Okay.
times.
And my thought would be to include that, to make it to the draft, like, as liberal as, as we've been talking about, so that it's gonna be easier to edit things out than for us to come up with, to add language, I
Okay.
think.
So,
Thanks for your help.
anybody have anything else?
No. Yeah, thank you. Good luck with it.
Yeah. Very complicated. Okay, we've got a few minutes to go through the bills.
Not a lot of bills this month. Just a couple things. I forgot to hit this in the financials because I just realized this came through. On page 55, Madison Met Stewards District, $215,000 for the quarter. That's going to put us over in our sewage, our sewer fund, probably at the end of the year, probably like a good 30,000. I just got a revised letter from the, just going to go to the 2020 budget, revised budget amount, and the increase, I believe, is 15%.
And what did we budget?
Budgeted, we budgeted 10, but we budgeted, the revenue's at 20%, so we should be, they told us it's gonna be 10%, we budgeted, our revenue's at 20% increase. because of the 10% and because of the capital stuff, so we should be okay what we budgeted then. Got a little cushion in there, so it basically eats up all the cushion. But it's one of those things that we have no control over, that amount.
So, I just ask, on the MMSD thing, are we sort of subsidizing the expansion of the system for outlying communities?
Well, Dan probably has a better idea how it's all working. I believe it's a lot of their infrastructure cost, too, but
Well, I know new connections into the system, each developer has to pay the connection fee.
Okay.
I think what we're being, the increases that we're seeing on average from 6 to 10% annually is to pay for the bill of their capital projects, which handles all the waste from the regional area, so.
Okay.
Page 61, cover all North American Inc. Community Center cleaning. So this was a instance where we had a person on the child, using the policy of the child care. So instead of, we filled that by using outside services with that, so. Page 11, or page 63, I mean, Hamburg Construction, Bridge Road, as you see, this, I think we have a couple more payments left. The road almost be opening up here pretty soon. Page 65, and going into page 66 is just our credit card receipts. We do get about, probably an average, I think in each year we get about $1,000 in refunds per year. Our refunds are cash back, what they call it, from Monroe State Bank. 66, MSA, kind of a couple projects they're finishing up for us. And that's all I have.
Any questions? Is there a motion to accept the bills?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.